The sleek, polished floors of the Sterling Grand Hotel gleamed under the chandelier lights, an emblem of wealth and luxury. Zara Williams stood at the marble counter, her eyes fixed on the man before her. Victor King, night manager, and the embodiment of arrogance. His eyes scanned her from head to toe, his lips curling into a sneer. "Get your ghetto ass out of my hotel," he spat, his voice cold with contempt. "Before I call the cops." Zara's fingers tightened around the black card in her hand, the same card that Victor had just snatched from her grasp. He slammed it down onto the marble floor, the expensive $5,000 Centurion card crumpling under his heel like a worthless piece of trash. The echoes of the impact reverberated through the lavish lobby, and Zara remained still, a silent defiance emanating from her. Victor's polished Oxford shoe ground the card into the floor, twisting it with force. "This is embarrassing for everyone," he sneered loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. "Whatever corner you got this fake card from, take it back." He turned to the front desk clerk, Lily Foster, who was watching with a mix of nervous amusement and disbelief. "Should I get the mop?" Lily giggled nervously. "That card probably has diseases on it." The cruel mockery lingered in the air, but Zara's expression didn't shift. Her faded jeans and canvas sneakers clearly didn't belong to the image of luxury Victor was so desperate to maintain. She knew what he saw, a woman out of place, unworthy of this environment. The digital clock on the wall blinked. 11:47 p.m. Zara didn't move, not even to react to their jabs. She stood unmoving, her eyes burning with a quiet fire. "Have you ever been called trash in a place where you owned everything?" Bending down, Zara slowly retrieved the black card, feeling the warmth of Victor's shoe print still pressing into its surface. She slid it into her worn leather messenger bag with deliberate calmness. No words were exchanged as she straightened, her gaze unflinching. "I have a penthouse reservation," Zara said, her voice quiet but firm. She placed her phone on the marble counter, the glowing confirmation email visible for all to see. Sterling Grand Hotel. Penthouse, Suite 45,501. Guest, Zara Williams. Victor barely glanced at it. "Anyone can Photoshop this garbage. You think we're stupid?" Behind him, Lily typed frantically on her computer. "I'm checking our system now," Lily muttered, her voice almost a whisper. "There's a Zara Williams registered," but she hesitated, looking up from her screen. "This can't be right." Zara raised an eyebrow. "What can't be right?" "Well," Lily gestured vaguely, unable to find the words. "The real Zara Williams would be different. Important. You know." Victor leaned over the counter, his tone dripping with condescension. "Let me break this down for you, sweetheart. This is a 5-star establishment. We host Fortune 500 CEOs, A-list celebrities, foreign diplomats." He gestured at the opulent surroundings, crystal chandeliers, imported Italian marble, and the hand-carved mahogany desk. "Look around. You see anyone else here dressed like they just rolled out of a Walmart parking lot?" Zara glanced at her phone. 11:52 p.m. The clock was ticking. In 8 minutes, she would have a conference call with Yamamoto Industries in Tokyo, closing a $200 million deal that had taken 6 months to negotiate. The tension in the lobby thickened. Guests, intrigued by the growing scene, exchanged glances. An elderly couple in designer evening wear whispered behind jeweled hands. A business executive in a $1,000 suit paused his phone call to witness the spectacle. A young woman sitting in the seating area, Jennifer Kim, discreetly opened Instagram Live on her phone, her fingers moving urgently. "Y'all, I'm witnessing some serious discrimination at this fancy Chicago hotel right now," Jennifer whispered into the phone. "This is insane." The viewer count climbed. 47, 89, 156. Victor turned back to Zara, his confidence growing with each passing moment. "I've worked in luxury hospitality for 8 years," he said with increasing certainty. "I could spot a scammer from a mile away. The way you walk, the way you talk, that cheap bag you're carrying," he pointed at her canvas sneakers. "You know what those shoes tell me? They tell me you take the bus. They tell me you shop at thrift stores. They tell me you've never seen the inside of a place like this, except maybe cleaning it. Lily laughed behind the counter, unable to control herself. Victor, you're terrible, but also not wrong. Zara didn't flinch. She didn't move an inch, even as her hands trembled slightly. This wasn't just about this moment. It wasn't even about the hotel. This was about making them understand something that they would never have understood if they hadn't been confronted like this. If it hadn't been for the perfect storm of events that had brought them to this point. She opened her messenger bag, slowly, revealing a small corner of her first-class boarding pass, its sleek edges peeking out beneath the flap. Chicago to Tokyo, the flight that would seal the Yamamoto deal. Beside it, a tiny sliver of her black American Express Centurion card, the one that Victor had destroyed earlier. I understand you're busy, Zara said, her voice steady, but I really do need to check in. Victor's laugh was harsh, a sharp edge of cruelty to it. Busy lady, I've got all the time in the world to explain reality to you. He sneered, his breath hot with arrogance. This isn't some community center where you can just walk in and demand things. This is private property, my property to protect. Before Zara could respond, the assistant manager, Tessa Carter, emerged from the back office with a stack of reports in hand. Victor immediately grabbed her arm, his voice rising above the murmurs of the surrounding guests. Pat, we've got a situation here. Someone's trying to scam their way into the penthouse with fake documents and a sob story. Tessa's eyes swept over Zara, her judgment swift and unwavering. Her lip curled slightly as she took in Zara's faded jeans, simple white shirt, and warm messenger bag. Ma'am, Tessa said, her voice carrying an authoritative edge. I'm going to need to see some real identification. And I mean government-issued photo ID that proves you can afford a $2,800 per night suite. The viewer count on Jennifer's live stream skyrocketed to 312. What will Zara do next? Will she reveal her true identity and end this nightmare? Or will Victor and his team push her further into a corner? Zara remained calm, her expression unwavering as Tessa examined her closely. She knew exactly what was happening. This wasn't just about a hotel reservation. It was about something much deeper. A fight for dignity, for respect, and for the opportunity to finally be seen for who she truly was. I understand, Zara said quietly, pulling out her driver's license, the last shred of proof she had to offer. She handed it over to Tessa, who scrutinized it like a seasoned detective, holding it up to the light, checking the hologram, even running her finger along the edges as though expecting it to unravel like some cheap forgery. Tessa's lip curled in doubt. This could be fake too, she announced loudly, her words cutting through the tension in the air. Identity theft is a serious crime. Should we call the police now or wait for security? Victor stood beside her, nodding sagely, his chest puffed out as though he were performing some grand act of justice. Good thinking. We can't be too careful these days. Some people will try anything for a free night in luxury. He pulled out his phone, making the call with exaggerated slowness, his voice dripping with false concern. Chicago PD, yes, this is Victor King, night manager at the Sterling Grand Hotel. We have a suspected fraud situation. He glanced over at Zara, as though her mere presence was enough to confirm his accusation. Zara's eyes flickered to the digital clock on the wall. 11:54 p.m. The minutes were slipping away, and she couldn't afford to waste another second. The clock was ticking down to her critical conference call with Yamamoto Industries. She was on the verge of closing a $200 million deal, one that could change everything for her company. But here she was, stuck in a lobby, surrounded by petty people trying to humiliate her in front of everyone. As Victor dialed, the lobby's atmosphere shifted. Zara could feel the eyes of the other guests on her, each one trying to make sense of what was happening. The elderly couple had stopped whispering behind their hands, now watching openly with growing discomfort. The business executive, whose phone conversation had paused earlier, was now staring, no doubt intrigued by the scene playing out before him. The young woman in the seating area, Jennifer Kim, had her phone up again, her fingers moving swiftly as she filmed the entire incident. Jennifer whispered urgently into her phone. This hotel is full of racism. Like, full-on discrimination happening right now. This is insane. The viewer count began to climb rapidly. 312, 456, 523, 745. The comments flooded in as more people tuned in to witness the spectacle unfold in real time. Zara's palms began to sweat, but she refused to let her composure crack. Victor turned back to her, his smirk widening as if this were all just another game he was winning. "I've been working in luxury hospitality for 8 years," he continued, voice dripping with derision. "I can spot a scammer from a mile away," he said with a smirk. "The way you walk, the way you talk, that cheap bag you're carrying," he pointed at her canvas sneakers. "You know what those shoes tell me? They tell me you take the bus. They tell me you shop at thrift stores. They tell me you've never seen the inside of a place like this, except maybe cleaning it." Lily laughed behind the counter, unable to control herself. "Victor, you're terrible, but also not wrong." Her voice was full of nervous laughter, the sound echoing off the walls like an insult wrapped in amusement. Zara didn't flinch. She didn't move an inch, even as her hands trembled slightly. This wasn't just about this moment. It wasn't even about the hotel. This was about making them understand something that they would never have understood if they hadn't been confronted like this. If it hadn't been for the perfect storm of events that had brought them to this point. She opened her messenger bag, slowly, revealing a small corner of her first-class boarding pass, its sleek edges peeking out beneath the flap. Chicago to Tokyo, the flight that would seal the Yamamoto deal. Beside it, a tiny sliver of her black American Express Centurion card, the one that Victor had destroyed earlier. "I understand you're busy," Zara said, her voice steady, "but I really do need to check in." Victor's laugh was harsh, a sharp edge of cruelty to it. "Busy lady, I've had all the time in the world to explain reality to you," he sneered, his breath hot with arrogance. "This isn't some community center where you can just walk in and demand things. This is private property. My property to protect." Before Zara could respond, the assistant manager, Tessa Carter, emerged from the back office with a stack of reports in hand. Victor immediately grabbed her arm, his voice rising above the murmurs of the surrounding guests. "Pat, we've got a situation here. Someone's trying to scam their way into the penthouse with fake documents and a sob story." Tessa's eyes swept over Zara from head to toe. Her judgment was instantaneous, as if she had already decided what kind of person Zara was based on nothing but her appearance. The lip curl was unmistakable. "Ma'am," Tessa said with a tone that left no room for discussion, "I'm going to need to see some real identification. And I mean government-issued photo ID that proves you can afford a $2,800 per night suite." The Instagram livestream had exploded. Viewers were climbing by the hundreds now, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000. The comments were coming faster than Jennifer could read them. The outrage, the shock, the disbelief, it was all palpable through the digital screen. Would Zara be forced to give in to this display of racism and humiliation, or would she stand her ground and expose the truth for all to see? Zara took a deep breath, her gaze never wavering from Tessa. She had expected this, had known deep down that this moment would come. The judgment, the assumptions, the humiliating accusations. But she wasn't the woman they thought she was. She wasn't just some girl from the street who didn't belong in this space. As Tessa examined her driver's license with the scrutiny of a detective inspecting a crime scene, Zara remained still, almost serene. Every detail was being scrutinized, the hologram, the edges, the texture. It was as if Tessa thought the ID would somehow reveal the truth of her worth. "I'll check it under the light," Tessa said, lifting the card and holding it up against the chandelier above. Zara stood there, an unsettling calmness in her posture. "They don't know who I am yet," she thought, "but they will." "You're wasting your time," Zara said quietly, her voice laced with a cool but steely confidence. "I'm here to check in, not to entertain your doubts." Tessa's eyes flicked up to meet Zara's, and for a fleeting moment, there was hesitation. It was as though Tessa was realizing something. This wasn't going to end the way she thought it would. Victor's voice broke through the silence like a whip cracking. "This could still be fake," he said dismissively, now turning to dial his phone with exaggerated slowness. "Let's get the cops involved. We can't be too careful these days." Zara's fingers flexed slightly at her sides, but her face remained neutral. The digital clock ticked on, 11:55 p.m. The call with Yamamoto Industries was drawing nearer. A $200 million deal that could make or break her company. The seconds felt like hours. She felt the eyes of the room on her now. The elderly couple had stopped whispering, their attention fully on the unfolding drama. The business executive, once absorbed his phone conversation, had set it down and was now staring intently. Even the young woman, Jennifer Kim, was filming again, her phone held higher, her fingers typing rapidly. Zara could see the viewer count climbing in Jennifer's livestream. 3,000, 5,000, 7,000. The comments were starting to flood in. Is this really happening? This is insane. Racism in 2025, wow. Somebody stop this before it gets worse. Zara glanced at her phone again. 11:56 p.m. The last few minutes before she had to take the call from Tokyo. But there's something bigger at play here. Something far more important than the deal itself. If she didn't do something about this now, it wasn't just her reputation at stake. It was the future of every person who had ever been discriminated against and silenced by people like Victor and Tessa. Victor, oblivious to the shift in the atmosphere, was still making his call. His voice carried across the marble lobby, dripping with false concern. Chicago PD? Yes, we have a suspected fraud situation here at the Sterling Grand Hotel. A guest trying to scam her way into the penthouse suite. She's been here for over 20 minutes, refusing to leave. Zara could feel the weight of his words in the air, but she refused to let them drag her down. This wasn't just about her. This was about showing the world what it meant to fight for respect, for equality, for justice in a system that too often overlooked people like her. Is everything all right? A voice interrupted. The businessman from room 2847 stepped forward. His voice rang out, full of calm authority as he sized up the situation. Zara could see him scanning the scene, his eyes narrowing with a knowing look. I'm sorry, but I've been watching this unfold for the past several minutes, he said, addressing Victor directly. This isn't about a scam. This is about you judging someone based on their appearance. Victor's face hardened. Excuse me, sir, but this is a private matter, he said, trying to regain control of the situation. The businessman wasn't having it. He smiled wryly and glanced at the crowd of people filming the incident. Private matter? This is the most public thing I've seen all night. This is literally being streamed across the globe right now. The other guests shifted uneasily, murmuring in agreement. Zara could hear their voices, whispers, questioning Victor's actions. Victor turned back to the crowd, his confidence cracking. No, this woman is clearly trying to. I'm not trying to do anything, Zara interjected, her voice quiet but firm. I'm here for a reservation I've paid for. I'm here to check in, and if you can't process that, then that's your problem, not mine. Her words had a weight to them. Something shifted in the room. People began to look at Victor with disdain. Zara could feel the tide turning in her favor, but it wasn't over yet. At that moment, Reuben Clark, the security officer, stepped forward. He'd been watching the scene unfold quietly from the side, but now his expression had shifted. He wasn't sure what was going on, but he could tell this situation was different from anything he'd ever encountered. What's going on here? Reuben asked, his voice calm but assertive. Victor turned to him, eager to enlist his help. Reuben, we've got someone trying to scam their way into the penthouse. Fake IDs, fake documents, the whole thing. We need to escort her out. Reuben looked at Zara, then back at Victor, and for the first time he hesitated. He could see the strength in Zara's eyes, the quiet resolve that radiated from her. And for a brief moment, he wondered if he was being played, or worse, if he was complicit in something he didn't fully understand. Would Reuben help Zara, or would he be another cog in the machine of discrimination? Reuben Clark hesitated, his eyes flicking from Zara to Victor and back again. The tension in the air had shifted, something subtle but undeniable. The quiet hum of the lobby, the soft chime of the distant clock, seemed to echo louder with every second that passed. Zara stood still, not an ounce of fear in her posture, yet the weight of the situation seemed to press down on everyone in the room. She knew what this moment would mean for her. She wasn't just fighting for a hotel room. She was fighting for her right to exist in a space that people like Victor and Tessa believed she didn't belong. Ruben's brow furrowed, and he glanced at Victor. "What exactly is this about?" he asked, his voice steady but filled with a growing sense of doubt. "Because it looks like a woman is trying to check into a room she's paid for. You're accusing her of fraud. On what grounds?" Victor's face reddened. His grip on the situation was slipping. He wasn't used to being questioned. Not like this. His eyes darted between Zara, Ruben, and the growing crowd of witnesses. This wasn't how he thought the night would unfold. This wasn't supposed to happen. "Ruben, this is a five-star hotel." Victor snapped, his tone defensive. "We don't just let anyone walk in off the street and take a penthouse suite. I've worked in luxury hospitality for years. I know a scam when I see one." He pointed accusingly at Zara. "This woman doesn't belong here, and she's using a fake car to try and take what's not hers." Ruben shook his head slightly, as though coming to terms with something he hadn't fully processed before. His gaze softened. "I don't know, Victor. Something feels off here." He turned to Zara, his voice now gentle, almost apologetic. "Ma'am, I'm sorry about this. Let's just check things properly, okay?" Zara's expression softened in response, but her resolve remained unwavering. She had nothing to prove. She knew exactly who she was and who they thought she was. "That's all I've been asking for," Zara replied, her voice steady calm. She reached into her bag once more, this time pulling out her business card. The sleek, simple design gleamed under the lobby lights as she handed it over to Ruben. "Zara Williams," Ruben read aloud, his brow furrowing. "Chief Executive Officer of Richardson Ventures." Zara didn't say a word, but the weight of the card seemed to hang in the air. Victor's smirk faltered for a split second, but he quickly recovered, a nervous chuckle escaping his lips. "I still don't understand," Victor said, his voice lower now, tinged with frustration. "Why would someone like you be in a place like this, acting like—" He trailed off, clearly trying to choose his words carefully. "I mean, you're not dressed for it. You don't belong here. Does it matter what I'm wearing?" Zara shot back, her tone quiet but firm. "Does my appearance determine whether or not I'm worthy of respect? This hotel seems to think so, but I'm here to change that." Ruben glanced at the business card again, this time taking in the company name with new recognition. The hesitation was gone. There was a subtle shift in the air, as if the room collectively understood that the moment had changed. Zara wasn't just a woman trying to check into her room. She was a force, and it was becoming clear that no one in the lobby knew who they were dealing with. Behind the counter, Tessa had stopped her furious typing. She wasn't sure what to do next, her eyes flicking from the business card to Victor's face, which had lost its previous arrogance. Victor was faltering, unsure of how to proceed, now that the truth seemed to be slipping through his fingers. Zara turned to Tessa, then to Lily, who was standing nervously at the counter, trying to remain unnoticed. "Do you know who I am yet?" she asked softly. Victor's eyes narrowed. "You're just some fraud," he muttered, "trying to manipulate us." Zara ignored him, her gaze locking on Tessa. "I own this hotel, the entire company. I own Sterling Hotel Group." The words dropped like a bombshell in the room. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Even the soft hum of the air conditioning stopped, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. "What?" Tessa gasped, her voice barely above a whisper. Zara nodded, pulling out a small portfolio from her bag. She opened it slowly, revealing a document emblazoned with the Sterling Hotel Group logo. Her fingers skimmed over the top. Richardson Ventures acquired Sterling Hotel Group for $847 million on March 15, 2025, she said, her voice steady and calm. Victor's face paled, his arrogance deflating in an instant. He stared at the document as though it were a foreign object, something he couldn't comprehend. He stuttered. "You own Sterling?" "Yes," Zara replied, her voice still soft but filled with undeniable authority. "I own 67% of Sterling Hotel Group. This is my company. I've worked my entire life to get here." Victor's legs wobbled. His earlier bravado crumbled as his world tilted on its axis. I I don't understand. Let me make it simple for you, Zara said. She reached in her bag once more and pulled out an iPad. She swiped through it and turned the screen around, showing him the Sterling Hotel Group's corporate leadership page. Her picture stared back at them, a sharp contrast to the casual attire she wore now. In the picture, Zara was dressed in a tailored suit, professional, polished. The same face, but with an entirely different context. "Meet your new boss," Zara said softly, her voice carrying through the lobby like a quiet storm. The silence in the lobby was deafening. The elderly couple had stopped whispering. The business executive, his phone forgotten in his hands, watched in stunned disbelief. The young woman, filming on Instagram, was frozen. The phone still held aloft in the air as the live stream grew exponentially, now crossing 10,000 viewers. Would Victor and his colleagues be able to save themselves from the consequences of their actions? Or had Zara's revelation changed everything? The realization hit Victor like a wave. His face flushed an unhealthy shade of red, then drained to an ashen gray as the weight of Zara's words sank in. He was no longer in control of the situation. Everything he'd built, his reputation, his power, seemed to crumble before him, piece by piece. Zara stood unwavering, her eyes cool and steady as she watched him flounder. She had known this would come to pass, but seeing it happen, seeing the arrogance that had ruled this space for so long unravel, was something different. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for every person who'd been cast aside, dismissed, and discarded by people like Victor. The silence in the lobby was almost unbearable. The soft hum of the air conditioning had returned, but it felt distant, almost irrelevant. The onlookers were transfixed, their phones still raised, the cameras rolling, capturing every moment. "I don't understand," Victor finally stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. You can't be." "I am," Zara interjected calmly. "And this is where you and your colleagues will learn that appearances don't define a person's worth." The weight of the words hung in the air as the crowd watched, still and silent, absorbing the tension that had descended like a fog. Zara reached into her portfolio once more and pulled out a stack of papers. As she unfolded them, she glanced at Tessa and Lily, both of whom were now visibly uncomfortable. She was no longer just a guest in their hotel. She was the force that was about to change everything. "This is a quarterly performance report for Sterling Hotel Group," Zara said, her voice unwavering. "I've already seen it, but now you all will too." She placed the document in front of Victor, who looked at it with trembling hands, unable to process what he was seeing. The numbers were stark, cold, unyielding. The decline in revenue, the plummeting guest satisfaction scores, the dismal turnover rate. Zara's eyes scanned the figures, her tone never rising above a steady calm. "Sterling Grand Chicago," she continued, "has been underperforming for months. Your department alone has seen a 23% decline in revenue. Your guest satisfaction score is 2.3 out of 5 stars. The industry standard is 4.2. Victor's eyes darted from the report to Zara's face, his expression a mixture of disbelief and horror. This can't be right," he muttered, almost pleading, as though the document itself were a lie. "It's right," Zara replied, her voice ice-cold. "But that's not the worst of it." She flipped to the next page, revealing a detailed chart of staff turnover rates, pointing directly to the figure in bold. "Your department has an 89% turnover rate annually. That's almost unheard of in this industry." The murmurs around the lobby grew louder. The elderly couple exchanged uneasy glances. The business executive raised an eyebrow, as though the drama unfolding before him had turned into a lesson in corporate mismanagement. Jennifer Kim, still filming, had an expression of awe on her face as her live stream continued to climb in viewership. Zara paused, letting the numbers sink in. She could feel the weight of her words settling into the room, pressing down on Victor's shoulders, on Tessa's, on Lily's. The weight of their failures was finally being recognized. "I know why you're struggling," Zara said softly, as if speaking to them personally, not just as the owner of the hotel, but as someone who had seen the same challenges in the businesses she had built. "You're not listening to your guests. You're not paying attention to their needs, their comfort, their dignity. You've created a culture of disdain, and that starts at the top. Victor opened his mouth, as if to speak, but no words came. Zara continued. You've allowed discrimination to thrive here, unchecked. But it's not just the guests who are suffering. It's the employees, too. Your staff is unhappy, unmotivated, and unwilling to stay. Because they know they're not treated right. They know that if they don't fit your image of perfection, they'll be cast aside, just like I was when I walked in here. Tessa shifted uncomfortably behind the counter, her fingers curling into a fist, but she didn't speak. Lily, too, looked down at the marble floor, unable to meet Zara's gaze. Victor, once the proud night manager, now stood frozen, a shadow of his former self. Zara took a deep breath, her voice lowering. But you have a choice, Victor. You can resign now, walk out of here with whatever dignity you have left, or you can stay and face the consequences of your actions. But make no mistake, this is my hotel, and your actions tonight are unacceptable. The crowd around them had grown larger. Guests were no longer simply watching. They were becoming active participants in this moment. Every phone, every camera, every live stream was documenting the unraveling of Victor's world. Would Victor continue to fight, or would he finally acknowledge the truth that had been laid bare for everyone to see? The tension in the lobby reached a fever pitch as Zara stood tall, unwavering in her calm authority. The weight of her words lingered in the air like smoke, suffocating the atmosphere around her. Every eye was on Victor now, every camera focused on the unraveling spectacle. The guests in the lobby, once passive observers, were now witnesses to a transformation that was far bigger than a mere hotel confrontation. This was about power, accountability, and dignity. Victor's hands trembled as he fumbled with his name tag, his eyes shifting nervously between Zara and the growing crowd of onlookers. For a moment, he seemed lost, caught in a whirlwind of realization, regret, and confusion. Zara's words had shattered the illusion he'd lived under for years, that he was untouchable, that he was the one who had the power. But in the cold, silent realization of his failure, it was clear that the power had shifted. Victor stammered, his voice cracking. I didn't know. Zara's gaze hardened. No, Victor. You didn't know because you never cared to look beneath the surface. You never saw the people you were trampling over as human beings. You saw them as problems, obstacles. But those problems are the very people who made this hotel what it is. The ones you've belittled, the ones you've dismissed. Those are the people who drive the success of this business. Victor's face flushed a deep red, a mixture of humiliation and anger. But it was a quiet, desperate anger, one that couldn't shield him from the truth anymore. The room had shifted. The people around him weren't just passive witnesses anymore. They had become part of the change Zara was orchestrating. Reuben Clark stood at the edge of the crowd, his expression somber but filled with a newfound clarity. He had been unsure, caught between his duty and what he was now realizing was right. His gaze met Zara's for the briefest moment, and in that exchange, something shifted. Reuben had seen enough to know that the truth wasn't about loyalty to a hotel. It was about doing what was right. Victor, Zara said, her voice breaking the silence like a calm, controlled storm. You have a choice. Resign now and leave with your dignity intact. Or face the consequences of your actions. Your choice. Victor's face paled further as he looked around the room. Every guest was watching now. Every phone was capturing this moment. The damage had already been done, and it was too late to fix it. The truth was out in the open, and there was no going back. With a shaky breath, Victor stepped back from the counter, his hands clenched into fists. He glanced around once more, as if searching for someone to come to his defense, but no one did. No one moved to his side. The crowd of witnesses, including the elderly couple, the business executive, and Jennifer filming with her phone, stood silent, unwavering in their support of Zara. Victor's shoulders slumped, defeated. I resign, he muttered, his voice barely audible. I'm done. Zara nodded once, her expression unchanging. Good choice, she said. Her gaze shifted to Tessa and Lily. And as for you two, she let the words hang in the air, the silence thick with anticipation. Tessa shifted nervously, her eyes darting between Zara and the growing crowd. Lily, too, looked uncomfortable but uncertain of what would come next. Zara took a deep breath, then addressed the two women behind the counter. Tessa, Lily, you both have a choice. You can stay here and continue being part of this toxic environment, or you can choose to do what's right. You can take responsibility for your actions, apologize, and help make things right, or you can follow in Victor's footsteps and leave. Tessa opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Her lips trembled, but she remained silent. Lily, however, looked down at the floor, the weight of her actions crashing down on her in waves. She had been complicit, laughing along with Victor, ignoring the truth of the situation as it unfolded. Zara's gaze softened, but her resolve remained unyielding. This hotel can't change if you don't change. You've both seen what happens when you stand idly by and allow discrimination to thrive. You have a chance to make a difference, but it starts with acknowledging your mistakes. The silence hung in the air, thick and suffocating, as Tessa wiped a tear from her cheek. Lily's eyes, too, began to well up with emotion. "I'm sorry," Lily whispered, her voice barely audible. "I didn't mean to," she trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. But the apology was clear enough. She had been complicit, and she knew it. Zara nodded, her expression softening for a moment. Apologies are a start, but actions speak louder than words. If you want to stay, prove that you've learned something tonight. Prove that you understand the damage that's been done and that you're ready to make things right. Tessa stepped forward, her voice shaky. I'm sorry too. I was just following Victor's lead. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I wasn't. She looked up at Zara, her eyes filled with regret. I want to do better. I don't want to be a part of this anymore. Zara studied her for a moment, then nodded. That's the first step. Now let's rebuild. Reuben, still standing off to the side, stepped forward. What happens now? He asked, his voice steady but full of respect. Zara's gaze shifted to him. Now, we begin the work of fixing this. The reforms start tonight. She turned back to the rest of the staff, the guests still watching in silence. This hotel will change. We're going to create a new culture, one of respect, one where every guest is treated with dignity. This is only the beginning. As the digital clock ticked toward 11:59 p.m., Zara stood tall, her presence commanding the room. The power had shifted. The change was coming, and she was the one leading it. But what would happen next? Would the hotel staff accept the new direction, or would there be more resistance to Zara's leadership? By the next morning, a storm had begun to brew, not in the sky above Chicago, but in the corridors of power within Sterling Hotel Group. Amina Cole stood before the panoramic windows of her office, looking out at the city that never seemed to sleep. The glow of dawn streaked across the skyline, but she felt the chill of the message she had received only hours earlier. Ethan Crane, the disgraced former night manager, had filed a lawsuit against Sterling Hotels for wrongful termination, public humiliation, and emotional distress. And he wasn't alone. Clara Lynn had joined him. Their legal counsel? A ruthless media-hungry attorney named Daniel Fry, known for twisting morality into spectacle. The headline was already spreading across major outlets. Fired hotel employees sue CEO for discrimination retaliation. Amina's reflection stared back at her in the window. Calm, collected, but undeniably human. The reform had been righteous, but reform always met resistance. Behind her, Renee Thomas entered with a folder of documents. It's official. Their attorney filed a federal complaint this morning. They're claiming you used public humiliation as punishment. Amina turned slowly. They humiliated themselves. I only revealed the truth. Renee nodded. I know, but truth doesn't stop lawsuits. She handed Amina a second folder. Our legal team wants to settle quietly, avoid a media circus. Amina's eyes hardened. No, silence protects systems. We've done enough of that. We'll fight, but we'll fight with transparency. Renee hesitated. That means every record, every document, every clip of that live stream becomes part of the case file. The world will watch every second. Good, Amina said. Then they'll also watch us stand by our values. At that moment, Naomi Blake entered nervously, holding her tablet. Ma'am, there's something you should see. On the screen was a viral post, a clip from Lena Park's follow-up documentary. The title read, "The Sterling Movement, When Accountability Becomes Leadership." The short film had surpassed 30 million views. It featured interviews with guests, staff, and civil rights advocates praising the reforms. One quote stood out from a former guest: "She didn't destroy them. She taught them. That's power." Naomi's voice trembled. "The public's on your side, ma'am. They're calling you the face of corporate justice." Amina's tone remained calm. "Justice isn't a face, Naomi. It's a mirror. It shows us who we really are." Renee's phone buzzed. She checked it, frowned, then handed it to Amina. "Corporate HQ just texted. The board wants a private meeting immediately." Within the hour, Amina and Renee were seated inside the company's gleaming boardroom. The long glass table reflected 12 executives, each wearing practiced neutrality like armor. Brian Keller, the vice president, cleared his throat. "Amina, your reforms have attracted global attention. Some are good, some not. Investors are nervous." Vivian Cho, the executive VP, leaned forward. "You've turned our brand into a symbol of activism. That's risky." Amina's calm cracked just enough to reveal conviction. "What's risky is allowing discrimination to fester under chandeliers and polished smiles. We're not losing investors, we're gaining integrity." Brian adjusted his cufflinks. "The lawsuits complicate things. They're claiming emotional trauma caused by your public firing spectacle." "The optics are the truth," Amina interrupted. "If exposing misconduct is bad optics, then we've been decorating rot with gold for too long." Silence followed. Her words hung in the air like thunder before rain. Finally, Vivian sighed. "You've got heart, Amina. But boardrooms run on numbers, not morality." Amina stood, her voice sharp and clear. "Morality built this company's foundation. I'm just cleaning the marble." She turned to leave, but Vivian called out softly, "If you lose this case, the board may have to reconsider your leadership." Amina paused at the door. "If I lose, it won't be my leadership the world questions. It'll be this company's soul." Outside, flashes erupted from cameras. Reporters swarmed as Amina exited the headquarters. Microphones thrust forward. "Ms. Cole, how do you respond to the lawsuit? Do you regret firing your staff publicly? Are you worried this will destroy your reputation?" Amina stopped on the marble steps, facing the crowd. The cold Chicago wind whipped against her suit. "I don't regret truth," she said, her voice steady. "And I don't fear accountability. What happened in that lobby wasn't just a moment. It was a mirror, and we're all in it." The footage aired live across national networks. Meanwhile, inside a quiet law office downtown, Ethan Crane watched the broadcast with bitterness burning in his eyes. "She's playing the saint," he muttered. "But she ruined us." Clara sat across from him, pale and restless. "Ethan, maybe we shouldn't." He cut her off. "She humiliated us in front of thousands. She made me a villain." Daniel Fry, their attorney, smirked. "Then we'll make her one too." He leaned back in his chair. "I'll hit her with defamation, retaliation, mental anguish, the works. And the more she fights back publicly, the better. We'll paint her as an egotistical CEO who weaponized race and power for fame." Ethan's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Perfect. Let's make her regret crossing me." Back at Sterling Grand, Amina received a new email. Subject: court date scheduled. She closed her laptop slowly, exhaling. The skyline outside glowed like molten steel. "Then let's finish what we started," she whispered, because the fight for reform had just moved from the lobby to the courtroom. The story of Zara's confrontation and Amina's subsequent leadership transformation at Sterling Grand Hotel continues to unfold into a significant moment of corporate reckoning. This is where the fight for equality, justice, and self-determination begins to extend far beyond a single individual's challenge to power. It grows into a movement that highlights systemic issues and addresses the larger cultural changes needed across industries. The media frenzy didn't subside after Amina's statement. In fact, it only grew. The story spread like wildfire, and social media was ablaze with praise for the Sterling Grand Hotel CEO's no-nonsense approach. The hashtag Sterling Reform trended worldwide for weeks, with people from all walks of life sharing their experiences of discrimination, exclusion, and inequity. Zara's ordeal became a symbol of resilience, a beacon for all those who had been marginalized, disregarded, or disrespected. In boardrooms across the world, senior executives who had once dismissed Zara's claims as a mere inconvenience were now revisiting their own policies. Change, it seemed, was now more than just an idealistic pursuit. It was becoming the mandate for businesses to survive in a world that increasingly valued transparency and human dignity. Inside the hotel, the work was only beginning. Reuben Clark, once uncertain, became an unlikely advocate for change within Sterling Hotel Group. Zara had inspired something deeper in him, an understanding that real leadership involved not just overseeing operations, but fostering a culture of integrity, empathy, and inclusion. Tessa, having deeply reflected on the events that unfolded, took Zara's words to heart. She began the slow process of rebuilding her career, committing herself to creating environments where respect wasn't just a policy, but a practice. She couldn't undo her past actions, but she could ensure they didn't define her future. Meanwhile, Lily started using her platform to speak out against prejudice in the workplace. She wasn't one to shy away from confrontation anymore. The experience had left a permanent mark on her, and she now channeled that energy into advocacy, speaking at conferences about how subtle biases could corrode even the most well-meaning organizations. Inside Sterling's corporate offices, Amina's leadership was under intense scrutiny. The boardroom had become a battleground, with some executives rallying behind her, while others quietly questioned her methods. But Amina wasn't worried about appeasing the critics. She was focused on one thing: making Sterling a true example of corporate responsibility. As the weeks passed, the media spotlight moved from scandalous headlines to more profound discussions about leadership, the weight of accountability, and the courage it took to stand up against the entrenched systems of power. Many began to look at Amina not as a figurehead of corporate dominance, but as a trailblazer, someone who had turned a difficult moment into a revolution for a new kind of leadership. The lawsuit, while challenging, became a catalyst for even greater transparency. Daniel Fry, their ruthless attorney, sought to paint Amina as the villain in a tale of corporate retaliation. But the more the case progressed, the clearer it became. Amina was not the aggressor. She was simply the woman who dared to do what so many had failed to do: hold the powerful accountable. In the midst of these trials, Amina found herself facing a new kind of challenge. The very corporate world that had once idolized the old guard was beginning to shift. The concept of corporate justice was no longer just a slogan. It was becoming the new expectation. And for Amina, that meant a harder fight, one that demanded more than just legal victories. It called for a cultural shift, a relentless pursuit of fairness in every corner of the business. Zara's actions at the Sterling Grand Hotel reverberated across industries. In conferences, in online forums, in private corporate meetings, leaders were having conversations they'd long avoided. The real impact was not just on Sterling, but on companies nationwide, from tech giants to luxury brands. Diversity, inclusion, and fairness were no longer fringe topics. They were at the heart of the business dialogue. The movement spread, but it wasn't without its opposition. Not everyone was ready to abandon the old ways. Some tried to hold on to outdated ideals of hierarchy, exclusion, and superiority. But for every naysayer, there was a rising tide of support for the values Amina, Zara, and their supporters were championing. It was clear now that this was not just a battle for one woman's dignity or one company's reputation. This was a battle for the soul of corporate leadership in the 21st century. Back at the Sterling Grand, employees were more engaged than ever before. The days of silent suffering, of pretending nothing was wrong, were over. Staff at all levels had witnessed firsthand what real change could look like. And now, they were empowered to contribute, to speak up, and to demand a workplace where respect was paramount. As Zara prepared for her Tokyo flight, she felt a quiet satisfaction settle within her. She had faced down a system that sought to strip her of her worth, and she had come out stronger, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been made to feel less than. Her fight was not just about one moment of personal triumph. It was about giving others the tools to fight for themselves, too. The journey from the hotel lobby to the corporate offices had been a battle of epic proportions. But for Zara and Amina, it was just the beginning. They were now leaders not by virtue of their titles, but by the courage they had shown in the face of adversity. Their stories were intertwined, each one a testament to the power of standing firm in one's truth. The world was watching, and, as they had proven, when change starts with one courageous voice, it has the power to create an unstoppable movement. Will you join them? Change is never easy, but it's always worth fighting for. Zara, Amina, and the incredible shift they sparked at Sterling Grand Hotel are a reminder that when we stand firm in our truth, we not only transform our own lives, but we set a powerful example for the world around us. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think about the change you want to see in your own life, then don't let this be the last time you hear it. This is just the beginning of many more stories of courage, empowerment, and triumph over adversity. If you want more stories like this, stories that spark change, challenge norms, and show that one voice can truly make a difference, then hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and make sure you turn on notifications so you never miss a moment of this journey. We're just getting started. Join the movement, be part of the change, and come back for more stories that remind us all. Real change begins with one courageous choice. Your voice matters. Let's make history together. We'll see you next time. Stay inspired. Stay courageous.